काम और दहन है। आप सबका शुक्रिया, मेहरबानी, जज़ाकुमुल्लाह।
Sir, thank you very much. Now I would like to invite Brigadier Retired Akhtar Nawaz Janjua Sahab to come and deliver his speech. Brigadier Retired Akhtar Nawaz Janjua Sahab.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم سبحان الله وبحمده سبحان الله العظيم سبحان الله العظيم وبحمده ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم يا الله يا صاحب النور صل على سيدنا وعلى محمد صاحب النور. The Honorable Chief Guest Excellency Mr. Abdullah Al-Salami, Minister of Endowment and Religious Affairs, Kingdom of Oman, Honorable Minister, Government of Pakistan, Dr. Nurullah Qadri, Mashayikh Azam, Excellencies, Scholars, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum. I would have loved to talk in Urdu. I don't know, I understand a little Arabic, but I don't know Arabic that much, so I could not speak. So I asked Dr. Sahib which language I should talk. He said use English. So I have an interpreter sitting here, Dr. Ahmed, he can come over and interpret, but I like to first of all say a few words about the Sultanate of Oman and Pakistan. We have had wonderful relations since Pakistan came into being. And Excellency, I have few colleagues, back in 70s we were trained together, and then few students of your forces, I taught them in the armed forces. So I'm sure that your visit will further cement the brotherly relationship between the two brotherly countries and play a role, positive role for the Ummah, as the topic says, the Islamophobia and the role of Ummah. Ladies and gentlemen, Islamophobia, this term came into use in the last decade of last century, but it is very old. It is as old as the first revelation, Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq. It's not a new phenomenon. As Dr. Qadri said, Islamophobia or phobia means that fear of unknown, insecurity, which generates hatred. So, as Rasulullah ﷺ walked down, descended from the Hira alone, this phenomena started. He and his exalted companions were the first one to subject it to Islamophobia. They had to make the highest sacrifices, where they had to leave their homes. From 7th century till 11th century, Muslim rule and Islam, it expanded. And it expanded beyond the boundaries of Arabian Peninsula to the entire world. That single voice which descended from Hira today is shared by 1800 million human beings, cosmopolitan human beings on this earth. No country is without Muslims, no color is without Muslims, no creed is without Muslims. Muslims or Islam has the shortest time as compared to the divine religions, but it has got the longest history of persecution. I don't want to say anything which brings in some repulsion. I just would like to throw some light on the history. If we go back to the last decade or the last year of 11th century, after about 390 years of rule, Muslim rule, and Jerusalem fell. Old, young, women, men, children, infant, nobody was spared. History says the occupation forces were walking with ankle-deep human blood. Then came the southern Italy, Sicily. I'm sure the descendants of those Muslims who were forced to convert are still residing there. Then came the Mongols. They destroyed everything, and it is all part of the Islamophobia, that fear of unknown. The positive thing is that Islam even then was the most expanding religion, and even today it is the most expanding religion. All the downtrodden of the earth, the scholars, the well-read people, the thinking people have converted to Islam over a period of time in all the entire world, in entire the globe. But still, this fear of unknown, it reigns supreme, it has reigned supreme, and the fault, ladies and gentlemen, doesn't lie with those who don't understand. The fault lies with us. There is nothing wrong with Islam. Islam is the most merciful religion. It says, if you kill one human being, you have killed the entire humanity. It says, if one Muslim kills another Muslim, he will not be forgiven. So the operators of Islam, those, me, you, probably there is something wrong with that and we could not. If we find those from 680 to 1099, we find the expansion of Muslim rules. We find the benevolence of the Muslim rulers. They did not coerce the people to embrace Islam. That is why wherever they went, they remained in minority. People converted voluntarily. There was no la ikrah fi deen. There was no coercion in matters of faith. But thereafter, the polarization, the tafarruqa, the nifaq, it took over. We became polarized. Our unity went away. We forgot the real Islam and started following Islam of our own choosing. We could not explain the real Islam to those who were in fear, who had that unknown fear. What we do, this monotheistic religion, they thought us inferior, they thought us barbarian, but we made no efforts. And it continues. It continues in Myanmar, it continues in India, it continues in Kashmir, it continues in Palestine. If the history is written impartially, I think the number of people who have died on this earth since Adam was sent to the land, I think Muslim blood will be more than anybody else. So I appreciate government of Pakistan that they have arranged this seminar. I also appreciate that the Prime Minister of Pakistan took this issue to the United Nations and explained it to the world that we are not the terrorists. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we have to understand that terrorism and Islamophobia are interrelated. But something is done like the way it was done in New Zealand, in Norway, or with the Rohingyas, or with the Muslims in India, or with the Muslims in Kashmir or Palestine. There's a reaction. And that reaction breeds terrorism. Terrorism breeds Islamophobia. So they are both interrelated. It has to be understood by us that once we do something, we resort to killing. It generates Islamophobia there. And the Islamophobes must understand, once they do something wrong with Islam, or the sanctity of its Prophet ﷺ is violated, it generates reaction which ultimately is labeled as terrorism. I think if this realization has come to the leaders of Muslim Ummah, as at least few diplomats sitting here and ministers of, it's high time that we should chalk out a proper program. The first thing to be done is the proper Islamic education as it is in the true sense of the word. The Islam which says, do not abuse even a false god of others because they then abuse your true God. The Islam which is nothing but the mercy. Then there are UN resolutions on the freedom of faith. I think I was just going through the resolution 1618, which says that everybody is free to practice his religion. We should take up all these all these issues at the UN level, at the Geneva level, wherever the human rights organizations exist. Then we have our Islamic centers in the entire world. The Islamic centers must play an important, they can play and they must play that role in clarifying to the people. It is bad to quote personal example, but I was in the United States in 1990. There were about 2,000 people sitting in a hall. A gentleman walked in, he was specialist of the behavior patterns. So he said something which was not as per the Islamic practices, but he defined it as per the conservative Quran. So I got up and I told him, I said, what I am going to say you will not believe, but here is a book written by your director of churches, Mr. R. Marson Spate. He says God is one the way of Islam. He has done 70% justice with Islam. 30% he had the doubts. And thereafter, once people read that book, they made me give the presentation to the entire faculty of about 5,000 people sitting there. And then there were a lot of questions, a lot of doubts were clarified about Islam. I think this is the, rather than indulging in rhetoric, we must give the true Islam to the people and tell them that Islam as the first religion which said Medina is inhabited by Jews, Christians, pagans and Muslims. Each shall have the independence to practice their faith. And in case of foreign aggression, each will be a wall of defense. That is the Misaki Medina. The terrorism is not part of Islam. We are supposed to only lift our hands in our defense, and that too, the lines are clearly drawn. We are not supposed to kill those who are the non-competent. We are not supposed to kill those who are old. We are not supposed to kill those who are women, children, the crops. So I think the governments, the Ummah, the OIC must activate. I think there is an observer group which is doing the job. They must activate that group and make a curriculum, go out to the people wherever there is a problem to explain what Islam is, and we have got nothing to do with those who perpetrate terror. And in fact, if we try to find out where they came from, we can trace them back to the same people who are the Islamophobes. So I would request the honorable ministers here that if you have started this process, please go all out to present the real Islam to the world, the Islam which is nothing but the love. I thank you.